Hello, good day everyone. I am Joshua Pactadampog and I am one of the reporter for today's discussion. Since we are online today, I assigned one of your classmates to do the attendance, and since we don't have an assignment, let's have first the recap of our last topic. So the topic that we discussed last meeting was all about ASEAN integration. So what does ASEAN stands for? ASEAN stands for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. There are 10 countries that are members of ASEAN. Those are Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. Also, ASEAN was created as an organization in 1967 with the aim of helping to bring about a Southeast Asian region of peace, freedom, and prosperity for their people. ASEAN has 6 fundamental principles, and those are mutual respect for independence, sovereignty, equality, territorial integrity, and national identity of all nations, the right every state to lead its national existence free from external interference, subversion, and coercion, non-interference in the internal affairs of one another, settlement of the difference by peaceful manner, renunciation of the threat of use of force, and the last one is effective cooperation among themselves. So, there are pillars of ASEAN community. Those are ASEAN Economic Community, ASEAN Political Security Community, and ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community. Also, last meeting we tackled about ICT, which stands for Information and Communication Technology. So ICT is a device or a driving force in globalization, while ICT enables the interconnectedness of people and societies and levels the playing fields and access the information. It also highlights the division in the world between haves and have-nots, between the information rich and the information poor. So that's all we discussed last meeting. Alright, let's move on to the presentation of the topic. So our topic for today's discussion is about gender and development. There are millions of people who are part of the LGBTQIA community, and yet our society still does not acknowledge who they are and their roles in building a better world. Vulnerable groups such as the LGBTQIA community and women in general in this modern age still face decades-long challenges in achieving equality. So, it is important that we understand who they are and support them in their struggle for an equal society that fully accepts them for who they are by giving them the same rights and opportunities that are only available to those who conform to the status quo. But before we continue discussing about gender and development, allow me to present to all of you our objectives for today's discussion. At the end of the lesson, the students should be able to define gender and sex, differentiate gender equality and gender inequality, value the importance of gender, and the last one is to promote gender equality by making a slogan. So now, let us formally begin our discussion by knowing what is GAD or gender and development. So the question is, when was gender and development was developed? So the answer is, gender and development was developed in the 1980s as an alternative to the Women in Development or WID approach. Gender and development is a development perspective and process that are participatory and empowering, equitable, sustainable, free from violence, respectful of human rights, supportive of self-determination, and actualization of human potentials. So gender and development approach is concerned with the way with the society assigns a roles, responsibilities, and expectations to both men and women. So, it applies gender analysis to show patterns on how men and women work together using neutral interpretation of economics and competency. And now, let's define what is gender. So for you class, what is gender? Gender refers to the characteristics of women, men, girls, and boys that are socially constructed. This includes norms, behaviors, and roles associated with being a woman, man, girl, or boy, as well as relationships with each other. As a social construct, gender varies from society to society and can change over time. So when we say gender, it refers to your sense of who you are as a guy, girl, or something else as opposed to what your physical characteristics, genes, and hormones indicate. According to the book, gender is one of the universal dimensions on which status difference are based. The term gender is often mistakenly interchanged with the term sex. So now the question, how does the term gender is often mistakenly interchanged with the term sex? So let's define what is sex. Sex is usually categorized as female or male, but there is variation in the biological attributes that comprise sex and how those attributes are expressed. There are a number of indicators of biological sex, including sex chromosomes, gonads, internal reproductive organs, and external genitalia. So in short, the difference between gender and sex is that sex is a biological concept while gender is a social construct specifying the socially, culturally prescribed roles that men and women are to follow. And now, let's define what is SOGI. SOGI stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, and Expression. Sexual orientation refers to a person's sexual and emotional attraction to another person. It answers the question, who do you love? Sexual orientation is how a person characterizes their sexuality. According to Ryan Watson, there are three distinct components of sexual orientation. First, identity. Second, behavior. And the last one is attraction. There's a common misconception that gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation are all the same thing, but they are all independent to one another. Gender identity is who you see yourself as. It also refers to one's internal sense of being a man, woman, or neither. This may or may not correspond to a person's sex assigned at birth or to a person's primary or secondary sex characteristics. It answers the question, who are you? And the last one is gender expression. Gender expression is how you present yourself to the world. This presentation of an individual, including physical appearance, clothing choice, and behaviors. Gender expression may or may not conform to a person's gender identity. And now, let's hear the voice of Miss Cyril de Guzman, one of the discussants for today.
Now, let's move on to the theories of gender development. First is the social learning theory. Believes that parents as distributors of reinforcement reinforce appropriate gender role behaviors by their choice of toys, by urging boy or girl behavior, and by reinforcing such behavior. Parents encourage their children to engage in gender appropriate behavior. And also, if parents have good relationships with their children, they become models for their children to imitate, encouraging them to acquire gender-related behavior. So, social learning theory, parents influence their children's gender roles by rewarding them for behaving in ways that are considered appropriate for their gender. This can occur through the toys parents choose to give their children, the encouragement they give for boy or girl behavior, and the positive reinforcement they give when their children engage in gender-appropriate behavior. In other words, parents shape their children's gender roles by rewarding behavior that matches stereotypical expectations for boys or girls. The social learning theory developed by Albert Bandura is a theory that suggests people learn new behaviors and attitudes through observation of others. This theory suggests that individuals acquire new behaviors by observing others and the consequences of those behaviors. It also posits that people acquire new knowledge and skills through observation and direct experience. According to Bandura, there are several key elements to social learning theory. Firstly, the individuals not only learn through their own experiences, but also by observing and imitating the actions, attitudes, and values of others, and their social environment such as parents, peers, teachers, and media figures. According to this theory, individuals determine whether to learn and replicate a behavior based on perceived rewards or punishments associated with it. For example, if a child observes the children's friend gets praise for sharing toys, they are more likely to imitate that behavior in order to receive praise themselves. The social learning theory also emphasizes the role of reinforcement, both positive and negative, and learning. Positive reinforcement occurs when a behavior is followed by a desirable consequence, like praise or reward, which increases likelihood of that behavior being repeated. Negative reinforcement occurs when a behavior is followed by the removal of an unpleasant consequence like removing a fork, which also increases the likelihood of the behavior being repeated. That's all about the social learning theory.
Next reporter is Miss Ginaline Guyana.
Good morning, class. So I am here to present you for the continuation of our discussion. The second topic to me is the cognitive development theory. The cognitive developmental theory explains gender development in conjunction with the cognitive development of children as speculated by Lawrence Kohlberg, based on the original theory of Judith Piaget about how children develop their ability to think and reason. So, as you can remember,
My name is Bernard Queno, and my topic is all about gender stereotyping. Gender stereotyping defined as the beliefs humans hold about the characteristics associated with males and females. In other words, gender stereotyping a male and a female based on their attitudes, expectations that could lead either be favorable or unfavorable. So, development of full human potentials of any of the two categories. So, for example, girls are good in English, boys are good in math, girls are emotional and indecisive o walang pag-alinlangan, salawahan o urong-sulong. Boys don't cry, they are brave, strong, and can depend on so schools may be responsible in promoting gender stereotyping. So, hindi lang sa bahay, hindi lang sa pamilya, kundi responsibilidad din ng eskwelahan. So, in promoting gender stereotyping when they treat boy and girls differently. So, example for this is, halimbawa, during katapos ng klase, so mag-uwian na. So, bago mag-uwian, so, we all know naman na merong mga sweepers, ganon. So, ang nakatask naman sa mga lalaki ay ang pagbubuhat ng upuan tuwing maglilinis. Samantalang ang mga babae naman ang nagwawalis ng sahig. So, this simply implies that boys are more powerful than women. So, there are conflict when beliefs, attitudes, and expectation associated with a particular gender has a negative image when, based on their gender, is assumed to have all the characteristics associated with his or her gender. So, nagkakaroon ng conflict. So, halimbawa, dito sa boys don't cry, so halimbawa girls don't cry. So, nagkakaroon ng conflict kung halimbawa ang characteristics ng isang babae ay meron ding characteristics ang isang lalaki. So, there are conflicts. So, attitude towards men and women's role is referred to as gender ideologies. So, there are 3 gender ideologies. So, number 1 is a traditional gender ideology. So, ang traditional gender ideology, so ito ay ang nakasanayan na dapat ang lalaki ay umiikot lamang sa pagtatrabaho. So, we all know naman before that ang mga lalaki ay nakafocus lamang sa pagtatrabaho. Samantalang, ang babae naman ay dapat nasa bahay lang and doing house chores because this ideology believes that men have greater power than women. So, we all know naman before that women are have less power than women. So, walang karapatan ang babae na magtrabaho before. So, dapat ang mga lalaki ay ang nakatuon sa pagtatrabaho and women should focus their energy on sa bahay. Ito is ang egalitarian gender ideology. So, this ideology maintains that power is distributed equally between men and women. So, this egalitarian gender ideology, so dapat the power between men and women are equally distributed. So, dapat walang bias because so dapat women can do work and also she can do house chores. Yan. Samantalang, so this explains that women should also given the chance to speak for themselves because if men have power, so women also has. That is why this ideology implies to equally identifies men and women. So ayun na nga. So dapat equally distributed. Hindi nga dapat ang women ay dapat nasa bahay lang. Dapat they should also have the right to work. Hindi lang dapat ang lalaki have the right to work. Number 3 is transitional gender ideology. So the third one is this truly believe that women is acceptable for women to devote energy both work and family domains. So this transitional gender believe that women should given the right to work both work and family. So dapat hindi lang siya nakatuka sa bahay, kundi meron din siya karapatan na magtrabaho. But they should hold proportionally more responsibility for home. So may trabaho sa bahay, sa pamilya. So dapat meron din siyang kakayahan na alagaan ang kanilang pamamahay. So proportionally more responsibility for the home. And men should focus their energy more proportionally on work. So ang men, dapat they should focus their energy more on work. So wala nang iba, dapat work lang. So dito sa the third one, dapat women should also be given the chance to work, family, and also more proportionally at home. Yun lamang po at maraming salamat.
And the last reporter is Mr. Ivan Nicolas Capulin.
Good morning, class. So, this is the continuation of the topic gender development. So, gender inequality. For you, class, how will you define gender equality? So, gender is when people of all gender have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities. Everyone is affected by gender inequality. Women, men, trans, or gender diverse people, children, and families. It impacts peoples of all ages and backgrounds. We need gender equality urgently. So gender equality gives women and men the same entitlement to all aspects of human development. Economic, social, cultural, civil, and political rights. It also gives the same level of respect, the same opportunities to make choices, and the same level of power to shape the outcomes of their choices. It is clear that every woman, man, or trans need respect. We need the right to respect without the discrimination. We need the choices of our gender. Because gender equality is an important part in the society to have a wonderful society or even the universe. Research from around the world has shown that gender inequality tends to slow down economic and growth and make the rise from poverty more difficult. To understand the link between gender inequality and difficulty to rise from poverty, we have the following. Half of the world population is female. Research shows that women and girls tend to work. Women are more likely to invest their earnings in their child. Because in this situation, the women they invest their incomes to their child, while men, they are using their incomes to anywhere from their needs, not for their children. And also, women are a major consumer as well as a consumer. Women shoulder critical lives sustaining responsibilities without which men and boys could not survive, much as enjoy high levels of productivity. So the given data, women's empowerment is particularly important for determining a country's demographic trends, which affects its economic success and environmental sustainability, according to World Bank Organization. So, throughout the world, women plays a critical role in the national economic growth and development. Their contributions have lasting impact on household and communities and it is the women who most directly influence family nutrition and the health and education of their children. Giving women equal rights and opportunities can only serve to enhance this contribution and bring us closer to the goal of eliminating poverty, hunger, and disease. So what is gender inequality? So gender inequality is a social phenomenon in which people are not treated equally on the basis of gender. The treatment may arises from distinction regarding biology, psychology, and cultural norms prevalent in the society. So because gender inequality is one of the barriers that every woman, every man have the opportunities to make decisions, to make their choices, to make their incomes to their children's, and every one of us have the power to have the right to choose whatever they want without the hesitation of everyone or the discriminations, because every one of us has the right and the power to avoid this kind of inequality. So reducing gender inequality in the labor market will increase women's economic security and can contribute to economic growth and development, ensuring women equal rights to property and access to the resources is fundamental to the fight against poverty. The full participation of women at all levels of decision making is a basic human right and one that is critical to peace and development. So, from reducing gender inequality can give and can increase the economic security of women's, because nowadays women are more powerful to when it comes to income or to in education for their children. So there are the points for reflections. So what are the effects of gender inequality to economic growth and development? Too many women are lacked of economic opportunities, and which is not only unfair but also harm growth and resilience for all. We know that in countries with greater gender inequality, just closing the gap in women's labor force participation could increase economic output by average of 35%, while men who are less able than women have better, all affected by gender inequality. So, in points of reflections, gender is the costume, a mask, a straight jacket in which men and women dance their equal dances. Second is, of all the ways that one group has systematically mistreated one another, none is more deeply rooted than the way the men have subordinated women. All other subordination feel by contrast. The third is, what are the implications of gender inequality? So due to the gender inequality, we have the gender pay gap. Similarly, it also exposes certain gender to violence and discriminations. In addition, they also get objectified and receive socio-economic inequality. All of these unlimited result in severe anxiety, depression, and even low self-esteem, because the gender inequality affects us. This is the problems that human nowadays is affected when it comes in discriminations. They do not respect the choices that we have. So, and the last is the role of school in promoting gender inequality. So, gender equality in education requires unbiased curricula and textbook. To facilitate gender-responsive instruction, curricula and textbook should be free from gender bias and promote equality in gender relationships. So the role of schools in promoting gender equality is one of the contributions that it enhances the opportunities given to men and women, that the children must be learn from the school without the discriminations that women's and men's are not the same opportunities, not the same rights. But in this school, in regards to gender inequality, they must uplift those barriers to those children without knowing that we need to respect the identities of everyone. So gender in this scenario, the gender development is now popular as a part of LGBTQ. So I must say that the society have the solution for us to be respected. And the school is promoting that there are gender identity, that everyone and the member of this kind of LGBTQ is known for their rights to wear what they want, to have a long hair, but it has the limits for each that we need to respect in schools, that yes, we have the rights, but we need to respect the guidelines of the schools. And for research, so peace education's transformative responses to major societal changes. So peace education's transformative responses to the major society's challenges. Peace education, it is the process of acquiring the value, the knowledge, and the developing the attitude, skills, and behavior to live in harmony with oneself, with others, and with the natural environment. So this peaceful education says that we need to acquire the values, the knowledge that the children can get in that education. So we need to have the behavior to have a unity and diverse society, that in this kind of situation, this is an educational, peace education is an educational responses in major societal problem. It allows changes in the society's ethos, values, and structures into non-violent, just and sustainable world. Moreover, it is a transformative education because of its purpose, content, and most of all this because the teaching learning process is uphold. Further research. So, the needs of education for sustainable development. So, education for sustainable development allows every woman being to acquire the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values necessary to shape a sustainable future. Same as a basic education, parang they develop the knowledge and skills and attitudes towards the gender development. All of us in this world, in this society, need respect. We need to right to vote. That is the gender equality, to choose that whatever you want. That so from the gender equality, we have the knowledge that women are meant tends to be equal opportunities.
Okay class, since we are done with our topic, let's have a short recap about our discussion. Again, what is gender? Gender, it refers to your sense of who you are as a guy, girl, or something else as opposed to what your physical characteristics, genes, hormones indicate. And how about sex and how it differs to gender? Sex is usually categorized as female or male, but there is variation in the biological attributes that comprise sex and how those attributes are expressed. While gender refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, expressions, and identities of girl, women, boys, men, and gender diverse people. And what are those theories of gender development? The theories of gender development are social learning theory, cognitive developmental theory, and gender schema theory. And what is gender stereotyping? Gender stereotyping is defined as the beliefs humans hold about the characteristics associated with males and females. And lastly, what is gender equality? Gender equality gives women and men the same entitlements to all aspects of human development: economic, social, cultural, civic, and political rights. It also gives the same level of aspects, the same opportunities to make choices, and the same level of power to shape the outcomes of their choices. And as your assignment, make a slogan that shows gender equality. Alright, that's it for today. We hope that you learned something. Goodbye and thank you.